Good afternoon, everybody. People are coming into the room now. It's really nice to see you. How is everyone? Let us know in the chats where you are. And how's the weather today where you are? I'm here. My name is Del. I'm the Asia Professional Development Manager with Macmillan Education, and I'm in just outside of Bangkok at the moment in Nonthaburi, Thailand. And it's a bit of a mixed day today. It's sunny at the moment, but it's been raining, as it has been, I think, across the Asia region recently. We've seen quite a lot of rain, which has been a bit miserable. So welcome to episode 4 of the Macmillan Education ELTea Time. Today we are talking about assessment, and in particular, assessment for learning. Hello, Pitsanalok. I've been there. Very nice place. Chartib, nice to see you. I think I recognized your name from previous sessions, so thank you again for coming. We've got Vietnam. Where in Vietnam are you? I was in Vietnam last week, and actually I'm going to Vietnam again on Thursday. I'm going to be in Ho Chi Minh City on Thursday for a conference at a university there. But I'm not going to be talking about assessment for learning at this conference. In fact, I'm not going to be talking about assessment for learning today, but we do have 2 special guests who will be with us today. We've got Super. Are you there, Super? Super is our regional, hi Super, hi, welcome. Super is our regional teacher, trainer, and academic consultant. She's based in Shanghai. How are things, Super? You okay?
Yes, great to be back with the latest episode of ELTea Time. Nice to see you. Hi.
Great stuff. Yeah, it's really nice to see you too. And we also have Adrienn Szlapak. Hi, Adri.
Hi, hello.
How
Thanks
are
for
things?
having me.
You're
Good.
very, very welcome. Thank you so much for coming. A little bit about Adri. Adri is our special guest today. Adri is an EAL special, EAL and ESL specialist, I should say. Also an academic manager, being involved in ELT, English language teaching and teacher training, academic management for over 10 years, and has a unique perspective, as she mentioned in a wonderful blog, which I'm going to post in the chat in a moment, about actually being an EAL student in the past. So he's really able to comment on all these issues that we deal with and that we've been discussing in our ELTea times before. So we're really privileged to have you, Adri. How are you? Can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm currently in Malaysia. I've lived here for the past 8 years. I'm based in KL, and the weather is really hot and humid here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're really, really pleased to have you, and again, thank you once again for attending. So let's get started without any further ado. This is 30 minutes. Generally go very, very quickly, so let's not waste any time. Just to say, if you have any questions for Super or Adri, you can post them in the chat box, and we'll either answer them as we go through the session, or we will wait until the end if we have time to do it then. We're going to be looking at these questions today. I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. So, can you see my screen okay, everybody? Super, can you see it?
Yes, very good.
Let's chat about assessment. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are the questions that we're going to be discussing. So it's all about assessment for learning, and I'll just take it from here. So I'm gonna take this down in a minute, and but I'll let the participants just have a quick look. But first up, let's ask our special guest. So Adri, what is assessment for learning? Can you give us an understanding of what it is, please?
Sure. It's also called formative assessment. So if you've heard that word before, right, it refers to the same exact thing, and it's nothing new, and it's probably something that our participants are already doing in their lessons, maybe even without realizing it. It's just a teaching approach that generates feedback to the students and to the teacher that they can all use for improvement. And instead of putting all of the pressure on like one particular grade from a test or a series of tests and the results from those, this is more about how to improve, where the students are, what they can do already independently, what they can do with a little bit of support maybe, and how they can do better.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Super. Have you got anything to add to that?
Yes, I just want to maybe share the background a little bit, because I really resonate a lot about the origin of assessment for learning. While I was doing my research about this topic earlier, I found out that AFL actually originates from two UK professors' research called Black and William. They recognized that what teachers and learners do in the classroom is very complicated, and it's sometimes very hard to figure out what really happens in the classroom. And they likened the classroom to a black box, which I totally agree, because when I started my teaching career earlier, back maybe 10 years ago, I really struggled a lot about how I should observe my students' behaviors in the classroom, how I can give feedback to them to help them improve, and how I can standardize some of my teaching to make the learning outcomes more visible, and how to collect maybe evidence of progress from my students. These things are very chaotic because everything happens in the classroom can be random, can be complicated, can be hard to find a clue. So I think assessment for learning actually provides us with a clear system or framework to give teachers and learners a very organized way to look at how learning is actually happening in the classroom, and how we can maybe document and record and observe all these things happening in the classroom, and find out the evidence and try to inform us for the following teaching and the learning. So, and also from the research of Black and William, they have found evidence that formative assessment or assessment for learning is really, really effective if it is well integrated with assessment of learning. Together they serve different purposes for improve students learning outcomes and make the learning happen.
Okay, so quite thorough from both of you. So if we think about, so you said assessment of learning happens at sort of a periods of time within the term, usually in the midterm and the end of term, right? And maybe some diagnostic at the start. Is assessment for learning the same, Adri, for every child? Is it standardized like that? How would it be the same if it's not standardized?
Well, I guess that might depend on the context or the particular school or the course, but I would say most probably not. I think teachers, for example, will have preferences for how they run activities that give them feedback about the students, and the students, the learners themselves, might have preferences for how they want to learn about their own learning, and different things will work for different people.
Right.
And I think age is also a big factor here, that younger learners will require different kind of activities than older learners or adults maybe. So yeah, I don't think there is a uniform way of doing it.
Right. And you mentioned that teachers are probably already doing it without realizing they're doing it. So can you just clarify what you mean by that?
I think, when you're an experienced teacher, you already have a repertoire of different activities that you like running with your students that give you information about where they are in their learning and how you can help them get to the next level. And I mean, in my understanding, assessment for learning is exactly that.
Right.
Now, I think maybe opinions differ about how we communicate the information that we get from that, or what we do with the data that it provides us. but as long as you're doing something that gives you information about your learners learning, and you're communicating that to them in some way or form, then you are actually doing assessment for learning.
Right. And then Super, you mentioned it being like a bit more kind of standardized in terms of, I would imagine there being sort of rubrics that you can use to maybe to make it a little bit more standardized. But as Adri says, every child is different, so we'll be at a different start. Oh, I shouldn't say child either. I mean, you can do this with adults, of course, but every learner is different and will be starting at a different point. So therefore, they need to be assessed on where they started from and where they are, rather than everybody's at the same position, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, just, AFL provides maybe teachers and learners with a guidance of how we can do that, but the way how we do for each individual is quite different as well.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Good start. Excellent. Right. Well, I feel like I know a little bit more about assessment for learning. So let's move on to our second question. So the second question is, how does AFL, I'm going to use the abbreviation. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to say it out loud, because sometimes using jargon can, if people weren't here at the start, they might not know what it means. So how does assessment for learning encourage learners to be more active and take control of their own learning? So we talked a bit at the start about it being kind of a tool that teachers can use. So now I guess we're looking at how students can use it, or learners. Super, over to you. You can start this one.
Yes, I think one key difference between AFL is, I think, the students' active role in it. So we try to engage students and involve students in the process of their own learning by sharing maybe very clear learning objectives and the learning outcomes with them, to make them be conscious of what they are actually doing and how and where they're getting. And also we train them to have some self-reflective skills, and to try to train them to assess their own progress as well, to train them skills they probably don't have when they do the tests, exams, like the traditional ones, but to give them a way to assess themselves. And also we will try to include students and learners in the maybe learning objective setting process as well, to give them an active role in taking control of their own learning. So by doing this, the students will be more able to be their own or be the owner of their own learning.
Okay, Adri, would you like to add to that?
I think yes, as Super mentioned, training the learners in the ways of doing assessment for learning, and especially teaching them or developing their reflection skills. I think those are two key ideas here, because if we want them to take an active part in this, then they need to understand not just how to do it, but also why they're doing what they're doing and what they can do with the information that they get. And even really little children can actually learn to do that. So it's great, and it is definitely a teachable skill. I also think that because compared to assessment of learning, assessment for learning tends to be more immediate. So you get the information closer to the time when you were actually working on an activity. Whereas when you take a test, you usually have to wait a while before you hear back. And not that that's not useful, and obviously the information you get is still really important. But assessment for learning provides you with immediate information that you can then act on. And I think that gives students more control over their own learning. Because they can change course, or they can ask for help with particular things that they realize now that they still aren't able to do independently.
And sort of, you mentioned that even little learners could do have control of their own assessment for learners. Now I know the last question is going to be looking at some techniques, but maybe you could you mentioned sort of reflection tasks. Maybe just give us if both of you just give us maybe a little example of how this might be done in a classroom. So we've talked about recognizing things, but if you could just talk to that and be a bit more practical about your explanation.
Well, one of my favorite short little reflection or assessment for learning activities to do with any age group really is the traffic light system. So what I usually have is a set of colored cards, just like the traffic lights, red, yellow, and green. And it's available to the students, and I use it at different times during the lesson, not necessarily only at the end or only at the end of the activity, but whenever I feel like I would like to know more about how my students are feeling about their progression, I ask them to show me the card. And if they are showing me a green card, I know that they are super confident. If they are showing me a yellow card, I know that, okay, I will need to go and ask them more questions and maybe provide a bit of support. And then if they are showing me a red card, then I definitely need to immediately go and help.
Right.
I also encourage my students to use the cards without me asking. So, you know, that's where training comes in. And because this doesn't really require that much language really, especially at the beginning stage, even young children or learners who are at a lower level of English can do that quite easily.
And I guess that also part of that, you mentioned training, but also there's a lot of classroom management within that as well, I suppose, in terms of building trust and rapport with your learners so that they don't feel uncomfortable by putting up their red card and they're not kind of feel like they're slowing things down. And I guess that just comes through again from experience and giving them the support, exact support that they need at that exact moment, right? Which is what you were talking about, being able to react immediately to something and help students, and they can see that happening. Super. Sorry, would you like to add anything to that sort of practical way of showing that to our attendees?
Yes, I also have the traffic light idea like in my list. I think it is really great way to do so. And also I think using maybe smiley face, slightly changing the signals, to make the students maybe make the activity more age appropriate, to make it easy to do. And it's, I think the way the idea is to form this habit maybe from the very beginning. We try to encourage students to be active and take control of their own learning from the very beginning of our course. They know this is what's normal for everybody to do, and they will be happy to do it throughout the course.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of building again if the course books are helping you with that by having reflection tasks in the book, then that hopefully will then kind of train you as a teacher to maybe go a bit further with it. And then obviously training the students and having kind of that whole circle that goes with it. So let's think about our learners in terms of their confidence now. So I mentioned about having the confidence to show a red light if I'm not feeling like I understand things, but I guess we're talking a bit more about the whole confidence in their learning. So how does assessment for learning help build learner confidence? I think it's Adri's turn, right? Yeah.
I think well, as you mentioned, Al, having the safe and secure environment in the classroom where the students feel confident showing that card, that's the first step. So it's all, I feel like, as you mentioned, you know, classroom management and reflection, all of this is wrapped up in successful assessment for learning activities. For students to know that making a mistake or having questions or not succeeding right away is part of the learning rather than a hindrance. That's very important. And modeling it, you yourself as a teacher, I think that's probably step one, where, you know, being honest about maybe certain things that you know, we struggle with. Like, I think we've all been in situations where we get questions from our students where like, oh, wait a minute, I have to think about that, or I have to look that up. Give students the confidence that, like, okay, well, you know, learning is like that, that I won't know everything right away, and it's a community project almost to find the answer. So I think another thing here to pay attention to is that, again, comparing it to assessment of learning, where you yourself as a learner, you're an individual and you're working on something independently and you're assessed independently. Assessment for learning is a great way of getting students to work together. And then nobody is put on the spot as much because you're working as part of a little group. And you have people that you can ask before you ask the teacher. And if more of you have the same question, then it just becomes less frightening to ask it in front of everybody else.
That's a very good point. Yeah, building that community and showing them. I think that's really key. Yes. I'm sorry, Super. I shouldn't be talking. Sorry, Super. You go ahead.
You can, I'd like to hear from you as well, Del. Yeah, I totally agree with Andrea. And also, I think compared to maybe assessment of learning, like a test or exam, assessment for learning, the format of assessment for learning is not about like testing or examining. There's no passing or failing. So itself is not very threatening to the kids. When we do assessment for learning, we don't make the students feel like, okay, I'm testing you, you need to give me a perfect like answer. But we should avoid that part of the assessment. We're actually implementing some maybe questioning, feedback, and also we try to do some quick activity to check understanding. All these activities are aimed to improve and to help the students to like achieve the goals. So I think so the students should be aware of that as well. We communicate the message to the students that we are actually doing this to help everybody to improve, and we also believe that everyone can improve by doing this. So it is, I think that the approach itself is quite encouraging and motivating in terms of its objectives. And also we empower the students to take an active role. I think when the students know what they're doing and they know they can take control of their learning, I think the confidence will also be increased as a result of that as well. So yeah.
Very nice. I agree with both of you there. I think another key point that you mentioned, Adri, as well, is about the you mentioned about making mistakes, being it's a natural part of learning, and I think when you've got a class who are not afraid to make mistakes, it's such a joy, isn't it? The more mistakes the better, because it shows that they're actually having a go and the confidence to use language. I also think for me with assessment for learning, it really provides something that sometimes is missing in a classroom, and that is that sense of progress that you get from realizing you've done something, you've made a mistake, for example, and then it's been picked up on, you've had a chance to correct it yourself, and then had a chance to use it again, and that's kind of a very simplistic way of doing it, but it does build confidence, I think. We've had a comment in the Facebook page from our friend Peter Clements, our first guest speaker, and he talks about something you mentioned earlier, Super, about assessment for learning being 3 steps, about knowing what we are learning, understanding where we are currently at, and understanding how to move forward. And I think if we can, as you both mentioned, train our students to understand those 3 steps as well, then it makes for a really positive environment, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on then to what time? Okay, we've got a few minutes left. Let's move on to the last question. I'm leaning over because it's on my other screen. So, what are your 3 best assessment for learning techniques to use in the classroom? So this one, we can start with Super on this one. So Super, if you give us one, and then we'll pass it over to Adri and then back and forth. and you
Yeah.
could keep going.
Sure. So the first technique I would like to recommend, and also it is very much embedded with a lot of modern course books as well, from our Macmillan Education course books. It's using can-do statements to make the learning objectives and the learning outcomes very transparent and clear for the students. And you do a can-do statement routine at the end of each lesson to make sure the students to feel that they have made a progress after learning this lesson. For example, I can describe my friend using words like A, B, C, D, and I can talk about my friends with a peer, something like that, to make the learning progress visible and tangible, to let them know that they are actually making progress and gaining confidence from that.
Very nice. Yeah, can-do statements. Yeah, always useful. And you can show those can-do statements at the start of the class, right, to say what you're going to do, and then at the end, what you have achieved. Great, Adri. I hope you're not going to say can-do statements. It's probably on your list,
No, but
though,
I do
isn't
love them. Well, one thing that we've sort of touched up on earlier is setting assessment criteria. Either for the students, and then making sure that they understand it and they know how to use it, so that not only are they able to understand where they are, but they would also understand what they have to do to get to the next level, or where they would like to be. But it's also, especially with older students, I think it's also a great thing to maybe design these assessment criteria together with them. So depending on the task that you're preparing for, say if it's an exam class and they have to learn how to write an essay, right? It's important for the students to understand how that's done. So they actually need to think about their own learning while they are training for the task, and encouraging them to then put all of that knowledge together and creating the assessment criteria together as a class, and then use that to assess each other as peer assessments, and then the teacher using the same assessment criteria to assess them after they've done the final product, for example, is a great way of training them in the way of assessment for learning. But it's also a great way of getting them to think about their own learning, which actually will be something that they can take away from the classroom for and apply it to other areas as well, not just learning English.
Yeah, it's a very good transferable skill that to have, for sure. Yeah, lovely, great stuff. Super. Number 2.
Yeah, number 2 is about asking good questions. Because in order to get the student, to check the students' understanding and collect the information about your students' learning, it's very important to ask the right question. So actually there are concept checking questions. It's a very big topic actually, but asking concept checking questions is not about asking, do you understand? Is that clear? We need to make sure you ask the specific question to check, for example, the grammar. Yeah, you need to make sure the students understand maybe the past tense. You need to make sure, okay, when did it happen? Did it happen in the past, or did it happen in the future? So you ask these specific concept checking questions to make sure you collect the right information about your students' progress. So if teachers are interested in about concept checking questions, I think we can provide more information about that, and maybe do some other topics around that as well, because it's a really, really interesting topic. Yes, passing over to Andrea.
Yeah, I never considered that actually to be part of assessment for learning, those concept check questions, but yeah, they are, aren't they? Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Super. Adri.
Yeah, definitely. Strategic use of questioning is a great way of incorporating assessment for learning. And one thing that I would add to this really is the wait time. I think that's really important. So whenever we're asking questions, especially if we are asking questions to find out about our students' learning, we need to make sure that we give them enough time to actually understand that question, process the language that they need before they are going to answer. And then once we have that, I think a good way of following that up is using might in the questions that we ask. So what might you do differently, or what might you do next? I think we'll, again, you know, we keep going back to this point, is like the trying to push them to the next level a bit, where, okay, here you are, this is what you're currently, yeah, able to do independently. How might you go to that next level?
Yeah, nice. Lovely job. Super. Next one, please. Is this your last one, right?
Yes, I want to mention a little bit about self-assessment and the peer assessment tools, because sometimes teachers, including myself, I might be concerned about using peer assessment or self-assessment because my students are not used to that kind of culture, yeah, in Asia. So I think there are a lot of good activities or tools to help our students to do so. For example, when we do peer assessment, we can use an activity called 2 stars and a wish. So you give 2 stars to your peers about their achievement, giving praise and a positive comment on their good areas, but also give one wish to help them to improve, like one area you wish them to improve. So in this way, I think it is more, it's safer, yeah, not to make like criticism or comment negatively on your peers, but also just to wish him or her to improve and do it better. Yeah, like 2 stars and 1 wish.
Cool.
Yeah, just
I
one
like
example.
it. Fantastic. Thank you. And Adri, your last example, please.
I think it was something that, again, I think a lot of us already do, but maybe don't think about as assessment for learning, is when you're checking answers to anything, asking or encouraging students to think about the reasons behind why an answer is correct or incorrect. And that's a super simple way of bringing this into the classroom. It doesn't require any extra planning. It's just a habit to get into that your students will pick up as well. And it's really, really useful. And it also, I think, again, helps with making sure that students don't feel so self-conscious about making a mistake, because then really mistakes will become part of the learning for everybody.
Lovely. Yeah. And I think that's a really, really nice way to kind of sum things up and sum up assessment for learning, that, yeah, mistakes are a key element of learning. I mean, I don't understand sometimes how people don't understand that, particularly learners, because whenever you learn anything else, you make mistakes, right? Whatever you do, whatever you learn comes with mistakes. You're not born being able to drive a car or being able to cook a brilliant I don't know, pad thai. It's just you have to learn, and you learn by mistakes. The first one isn't going to be great.
I love
all right. I think that kind of brings us to the end of the of our ELTea time. I'm just going to post into the chat one more time Adri's fantastic website. So please click on the link to this website. Loads of information. You'll get to know a little bit more about Adri. You can also read lots of blogs, get lots of resources. So go on there and have a look. We really recommend you do that. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Super. Many thanks, Adri, for giving up your time. All the best with the future. I know you've got something special happening, so all the best with that. And and thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.